All right, folks, if you already watched my video, Learning Geography for Police, for new cops, that's great. This is the commentary from the live stream on that video. I live streamed it on YouTube while I was shooting it. So if you haven't already, go check that out. It's a cool video. I think you're going to get a lot from it, especially if you're new to police work or you're an aspiring police officer. If you've already watched that, that's great. The link's going to be up there, by the way. If you already watched that, that's great. This is the live stream comments and questions. I'm going to cut it together and try to have things that are topical for all of you, given the discussion. So, we're going to go right to the top. Tanner Mazinski says, I've been waiting for this. Thank you. You are very welcome, Tanner. I'm glad I can help some people out. Hopefully, if you're in field training, you've already been explained all of this, but a lot of guys like to get a step ahead on learning geography when they get a job as a cop. They know they're going to go to the academy. They've got a month or maybe a few weeks to start working on stuff. This is a great place to start on your training for police work. Don't go to firearms classes or go to handcuffing classes or anything like that when you're trying to learn how to become a cop. When you know you've already got a job, you're going to go to the police academy. Don't learn any of that. That's all academy stuff. That's all stuff there's instructors for. But you can never be too far ahead on geography. This is one of the things that really holds people back in field training. And it's something that's very important you start working on as quickly as possible. All right, so Josh Griffin asks about geography. What happens if you're chasing somebody and they go outside of your jurisdiction? This is called fresh pursuit, and in the vast majority of cases, it's perfectly legal. If something happens in your jurisdiction, you can leave your jurisdiction to take custody of the person. Where I'm at in Illinois, if they go into surrounding towns or counties anywhere in the state, I can arrest them for that original offense that happened in my town and bring them straight back to the town. If they go out of state, let's say they go and they head into Indiana or into Wisconsin, I can take custody of them there. I can detain them there, and then once I've detained them there, I call for the locals who are going to take custody of them. I issue a warrant for their arrest, and they go to extradition. And that's the differences with jurisdiction going in and out of towns where I work. Now, as far as geography is concerned, you have to learn a little bit about the towns around you, and you're going to learn a little bit about the towns around you as you work in the town. But if you're new to an area, let's say you move to Vegas to work for Vegas Metro, you don't know anything about the town, you're going to have to learn the surrounding areas as well. Not as well as where you're working at, but you're going to need to know the major streets at least for about a mile in every direction. In case something happens outside of your area, you can at least describe. You'd be like, 2 blocks east of 4th, just north of 111th. Up there. So somebody will know, I'm over this way on a major street. You get into side streets, you hope you can see the side street addresses, but this is the stuff right here, that stuff right there, that's up on the board. This is the stuff that you need to know to pass field training. The surrounding area stuff is great to know, and you need to know some of it to pass field training, but the stuff inside, you have to be an expert on the jurisdictional boundaries and all the stuff that's in your town. It's also a big safety thing. Antonio Guzman asks, Tommy, what if you go into a neighborhood with cut fencing and other ways to make it easier for criminals to get away? Well, them's the breaks. We're never going to be able to go into every backyard and learn every fence and every break in the fence, but you are going to learn shortcuts. For instance, in my town, we have a walking path that's big enough to drive a squad car down. We found this out. So guys would run from us, they would run down the walking path, and think that it was too narrow for a car. Most people don't realize how narrow of a space you can actually fit a car into. This space, more than enough room to fit a Crown Vic or a Ford Explorer down. We would just drive after them down the path, and now you've got 2 8-foot fences on either side of the path, and you drive down it. So the more you work in a jurisdiction, the more you're going to learn about geography. In fact, my suggestion would be every day, take the car somewhere that you've never been before, your whole career. Or walk somewhere to a place in your town you've never been before. Like I always say on the channel, always be learning. Learn something new every day, and that pertains to geography as well. Unshelved Pilot asks, do you think chunking would be more difficult in a town like Boston where there's nothing resembling a grid of streets? It's going to be more difficult. I've worked in areas before where the streets looked something like this. We've got the Hooty-Hoo Street over here, and the Woody-Woo Street over there, and the Hoppy-Hop Street over there, and then streets that do this. This one is my favorite one. The streets that do this, where there's a curvy street, and then there's another street that curves off of it, because then you'll have streets like this where, this is this is Mackinac, and that's 119th Street, and so the intersection of Mackinac and 119th Street will be in 2 spots. That's going to be more difficult, but it doesn't change the method by which we learn the geography. You're still going to learn, let's say we had a chunk here and a street over there. We're going to take this as a chunk and learn it, and then we're going to take this as a chunk and learn it. You just have to be more creative with your chunks. Same thing with a town that's got lots of creeks and rivers. A lot of my rural guys with the creeks and rivers, you're going to have to learn chunks off of creeks and rivers, and you're going to have to use mile markers as reference points, and you're also going to have to use more like geographic, like locations, big barns and water towers and things like that, weirdly painted houses, that type of thing, in order to be able to navigate around and set your chunks. But the concepts are all still the same. You're still talking about take a geographic area, learn that geographic area, and then extend out from it. Hopefully that helps. Archangel127 says, you'll have to have irregular chunks, do it in a way that makes sense to you. Exactly. Just chunk it off in a way that makes sense to you. There's really no way, you're never going to memorize that without chunking it up. That's going to be even harder without having chunks. Violet asked, does your wife ever question what you're doing when you're driving around? A lot of my videos, if you're new to the channel, are me driving around talking about stuff. When I'm not doing things in my garage or doing tabletops, a lot of discussions are about, how to drive better or doing live streams about particular topics. My wife doesn't really ask. A lot of those I do when I get out of court, which is why I'll have a shirt and a tie on sometimes, or I'm waiting for my kid to get out of gymnastics, or I'm on my way to the gym or coming back from the gym, which is why you just see me in the black t-shirt or the Safe Life Defense t-shirt. Now, she doesn't wonder what I'm doing because she knows, because there's a pack of free field training patches in my bedroom and piles of flashlights and duty bags and all sorts of stuff all over the house. She knows full well what I'm up to, and she supports me most of the time, as long as I'm not answering comments when I'm on vacation. G. Wagner says, follow him on Instagram. He's become the boss of my group chat. I follow G. Wagner on Instagram because he does live weather forecasting. So he sends me an Instagram message when I'm going to have a bad storm here, which is really convenient. Go follow him on Instagram. Dude, when you watch this video, put a link to your Instagram in the description. I won't bother it. Put a link to it. People like it. Cranky Knuckles says, do the police have to do a test about this at the police academy, kind of like taxi drivers have to do? I don't know if taxi drivers have to do this type of geography thing at any type of training course that taxi drivers have. Most taxi and Uber and Lyft drivers that I've met, they all rely mainly on GPS, because if they have to drive around the block, it's not a really big deal. And their goal is to go directly to a location. Remember, with police work, our goal isn't to go directly to the location. It's normally to go a few houses or a half a block away from that location, depending on what's going on. I don't know the way all police academies work all over the country. Some of them might have some level of geography involved. Let's say you were to go to the Chicago Police Academy, or another agency that has its own police academy. Like, I think Vegas has their own police academy. New York has their own police academy for their city. You might have a geography section of your police academy training, but no test that you're going to learn that's just learning a map is the entirety of it. You have to drive to learn geography. There's no way around it. So I wouldn't worry about it too much about in the academy. Normally it starts in field training, in earnest, really having to learn geography, becoming a big thing. How is here says, your videos helped me when I first started with the PD. Thanks, dude. You are welcome. Hopefully this is one that will help you and other people that are just starting on. I have a hard time coming up with these topics and really getting the motivation to do them. If you guys think of new topics for videos that would help you or would have helped you when you first started on with a PD, please let me know, and I'll do my very best to get to them. This one's been on the books for 2 months. I've been trying to get this done. It's been way too hot here to be in my garage. No air conditioning in here. Mason Melody says, any recommendations for county police? I've never had to work in an extraordinarily rural area. This is what works for me. And from what I know about teaching people, not just this, but a bunch of different topics in police work and in scouting and in everything else, this same system, you're going to be able to adapt to what you're learning. As far as any particular tips and tricks about working out in a rural area and tips and tricks about working the geography, I really can't give you any because I've never done it myself in person. But the same concepts, chunking major streets, being able to put geographic locations to things on your map, and the direction from which you're going to want to learn things, all of this is applicable. You're just going to have to tailor it to what you're doing in the area you're doing it in. But that's true of everywhere. We talked before about Boston that has all these curvy streets instead of a grid. Same type of thing is going to apply there. Mike asks, how has really difficult names of things impacted the learning of geography? The hardest thing is normally locals, especially if you're not from the town, correcting you on the proper pronunciation of things. Apparently, everywhere else in the country, Pulaski isn't said that way. It's said like Paul-lasky or something. And so that's one thing that I came up, I came up in Chicago and I call it Pulaski, and other people that are on YouTube commenting back and forth with me on live streams and on Instagram on live streams are telling me, that's Paul-lasky. That's completely different. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I grew up in Chicago with a bunch of Polish people, and this is what they call it. So that's what I got. That's what it's called there. It's not so much an issue with learning the geography, but it is an issue with trying to tell people where you're at when they're not from that same geographic area. So there are streets that, I can't think of one off the top of my head, I've been working there so long, but there are streets in my town that the name is spelled kind of funny, and I'd say I'm on Euclid. And people would say, what street? I ain't no Euclid in town. And I'd be like, oh, it's Euclid. That's the way they say it there. Well, that's an odd thing. So learning it isn't difficult, but you have to be able to articulate the geography over the radio. And that's an important skill, maybe we'll get to in a future video. But you have to be able to articulate where you're at and where you're going and where things are happening at over the radio. So you have to have the same pronunciation of those weird pronunciation streets. Even if they're wrong and it's just your agency specific, you have to be able to talk to other people. So you have to be able to speak that same language and pronounce things in the same way. Mike then asks, are there some people that don't get it, and are they going to just wash out? Of all the things that people get dumped for in field training, this is one of the biggest ones. This is the most popular thing where I'm at for people to fail out of field training for not being able to do. The other one is multitasking. And these are two things that are very difficult to learn, very difficult to teach effectively, and are complete non-starters for police departments. If you can't learn the geography, if I can't yell, I need help at 12058 Mackinac, and you can't drive directly there, it takes you 10 minutes to get there from right here, that's a problem. That's a big problem that I'm going to have with you after we get it settled, or you're going to have when something happens to me and the GPS in the car says you were driving off that way because you didn't know where you were going. So this is something that people get failed for in field training quite frequently. So that's why I said you need to start working on this, at least the major streets and boundaries. But if you can, before you go to the academy, before you start field training, come with that knowledge already in place. Tanner Mazinski, hopefully I'm saying that right, says, when you don't have a grid system, what would you suggest as an alternative option to learn, or would you suggest the same strategy? Same type of strategy, heavy on chunking. Even when you've got these weird streets, you can learn what streets pop off of which street at a major street. So you've got a major street here, and you learn this one's Green Bay, this one's Mackinac. And you learn Buffalo Superior over there. So you're going to learn that what streets come off of it, so when you need to get in, then you remember, all right, this street, I can get on Green Bay, and that will lead me over to Forest over there. And then from Forest, I can get over to this other street. It's going to be more difficult, but the same concepts apply. You're still taking your major streets and then chunking minor streets into it. Dave says, what is the most difficult piece of geography to convey, and what great story can you share about it? The most difficult piece of geography to convey that I've run into has been this type of street here, where you've got, here I'll draw it a little bigger so people who are watching after the fact can see it. We'll take this grid down here. You've got a street that's curved, and you've got another street that curves off of it. So let's say this is Maine, and this is 4th. And now you have an issue with, I have to articulate, I'm at the intersection of Maine and 4th. Which one am I at? See how that could be an issue? There's 2 Maine and 4ths. And you can get this even worse if that street continues to curve back into Maine again, which frequently happens. Lots of times when they do that, they're going to call these different things, but people are going to forget which one they are, and they're going to refer to them the same thing. So now you've got 3 intersections that are all Maine and 4th. That can be a real issue, especially if you're trying to tell people the middle one. But you have to get creative with articulating that. I'd say County 291 traffic, I'm going to have traffic on a tan Buick LeSabre with tinted windows, no 28 on it, at the north intersection of Main and 4th. And everyone in town that knows the geography and knows the same words for the geography as me are going to know that I'm talking that intersection, not that intersection. And Hagerstrom says, do you think FTOs will be patient with a new officer if they're having trouble learning geography? That depends on the FTO. It's just like teachers. If you go to high school, you have some teachers that are super patient with students that are having trouble with a particular topic, and some teachers that are not patient at all with students that are having trouble with a particular topic. That's going to depend on the FTOs and how well they're vetted by the department and how actually committed they are to the work that they're doing. I don't yell at people, generally speaking. I tell my guys when they first start with me, hey, if I'm yelling at you, it's because you're about to get hurt, probably by somebody else. You need to listen immediately. For a lot of guys, all they do is sit in the car and yell. That's their only teaching methodology. And so it's going to depend on the individual you get as a trainer, unfortunately. Colin P. says, the way I learned was getting the streets that go north-south because they're sandwiched between number streets, and then learning the numbers. Easy when the main roads divide the 500, 600 block, things like that. Again, you're talking about main roads and chunking. And which direction you go is going to depend on which direction the blocks run in your town. Every town gets to set their geography weirdly in their own strange way. My town has this issue with address breaks that are very odd numbers. So our address break over here would be 119th Street, 120th Street. So you'd have 11950 should be this street, but it won't be 11950, it'll be 11910, and then the rest of them, it'll hop back up from one side of the street, it'll be 11910, and the other side of the street will be 11950, all those numbers in between will be lost. It's a super weird system. Every town's got weird things about it like that, but the major system is the same. Just find methods that work for you to be able to chunk the geography in place, and then you can use mnemonics and drawing it and that type of thing to help. The best thing I found with these types of curlicue streets is to draw them repeatedly. I'm not a visual learner. It's not the best thing for me. I would rather drive the streets, but with these types of curvy streets, that seems to really help for me. Colin P. says, helps were sandwiched between railroad tracks to the north, the 100 block, and the expressway, which is the 1200 block. That's a pretty cool numbering system where you've got 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and then there aren't streets at the end. They just terminate at the railroad tracks and a river or an expressway. That makes it a little easier to learn. Conquest says, how important is it to know your beat areas and response time? Well, knowing your beat areas is a matter of knowing a small section of the geography of your town, and for some small towns, this might be your beat. Your beat might be the whole town, depending on population, geography, and your call volume. But knowing the geography is vitally important to response time. Drive to an address you've never been to before and you have no reference points for, and you're going to see it could take you to go to somewhere that's a mile away. It could take you 15, 20 minutes to go there and then find the address. If you already know where the address is and you know the most direct route there, you know what streets you need to take and where exactly you need to turn off, you're not wasting any movement of the car, you're not wasting any time. That's a huge, huge deal in geography. It's a huge deal in law enforcement for lots of different reasons, especially when I'm screaming for help and you are the new guy that's coming to help me. Your Terminator, Runo, Restudio, Salutum, probably not saying that right, says, thank goodness one block of my town is named of trees, another is Great Lakes. They have a Great Lakes area and then the rest are counties. That's great. Gary, Indiana, it's my understanding, I've never worked as a cop there, but the cops I know they're there, and for my few times going in there to do stuff, their streets are in alphabetical order, and I think their presidents in alphabetical order, which is awesome for them because they know if they're going to Hamilton Street, they can just kind of go to where it's at in alphabetical order and turn in. And that's awesome when towns think of stuff that way. They don't always. Sometimes you end up with a big mess of different street names. Mike asks, do all the cops in a department use the same learning process? When they don't, do they stick out and muck it up for the rest? Not necessarily. A lot of people are visual learners, and I've had to teach visual learners before. It's a problem for me when I get a visual learner because I don't understand how they're learning, and I'd prefer to understand how they're learning, but as long as they're learning it, it doesn't really matter, unless they start having problems. It doesn't really muck it up once it's all learned. How you know where 120/58 Mackinac is doesn't matter to me at all, as long as you can get there when I'm screaming. So it doesn't really muck it up too much. Sometimes with the pronunciation of names, if you don't have somebody in the car with you, be like, oh no, we pronounce that Pulaski here. That's pretty much your only issue with it getting mucked up. And we discussed that already. Have you seen a tendency for street signage to become more or less legible over the years when it comes to size, shape, color, illumination, etc.? Street signage is becoming better for when it's unlit at night, but worse for when you try to purposely light it up at night. That's been my experience with it. Street signs, say 10, 15, 20 years ago, lots of them were brown and they had white lettering on them. And those were just fine during the day, just like green and white signs are now in my area. And what we've transferred to is green and white signs, and then we went to green and white reflective signs. So the problem we have now is at certain distances when you shine a flashlight at the sign, or especially one of those bright blue LED spotlights at a street sign, it'll reflect back so much that you can't read it. So that has become an issue, but you just learn to use the corona of the light to light up the sign so that you can read it instead of using the spot of the light. It's really an operator error thing, but it will throw some people off when they first try to do it. Robert Gillen Jr. says, do you got to get permission first before entering other jurisdictions? Where I'm at, there's no rule about needing permission to enter other jurisdictions, but we generally tell them, and we'll tell them through an interop channel if we can, because we don't want to, we don't want to step on anybody's toes. We want other people to know that we're there, and part of that is a safety issue. I want other people to know if I'm in their town, so if I need help, they know where to come and get me. Galaxy Storm S4 says, do cops use GPS, and how important is it for a 911 caller to know where they're at? Can't the dispatcher track my location? The phones don't track the way people think they do. They're only good to within, say, 50, 60 yards unless you have the GPS on. And even modern 911 systems, as of today, 2018, where I'm working, they don't work like that. They can't tell you're in a house in the basement at, 12058 Mackinac. They know that you're somewhere on that block, and that's not going to help you a whole lot if you're inside a house. So it's very important that you know where you're at when you call 911. We do use GPS. A lot of squad cars are GPSed, so sometimes dispatch can tell where the squad's at, but that doesn't help you. If they don't know where you're at, they can't direct me to where you're at. What is the interval of telling people where you are changing when you're in a vehicle in a pursuit? In pursuits, generally, in your town, you're going to know where you're at and be able to give directions and speeds and what you're chasing for and all of that pretty accurately. The further you get out of town, the harder it is. Also, the faster you're going, the harder it is, because you're going to have less time and you're trying to multitask. You're trying to talk on the radio and you're trying to drive the car and you're trying to keep up in your head whether you should still be chasing them, what tactics you're going to use. And sometimes pursuits can become difficult where a low-speed pursuit in a small neighborhood, I might be giving my location twice a block. When I start getting at 90 miles an hour going down Main heading toward the expressway in Bumsville, I might cross the border into Bumsville and now I only know major streets. And that can become an issue. Then we get on the expressway. It starts to get a little easier because hopefully you're going to be more familiar with the expressways from using them in your area to go to things. But also, you've got the mile markers on expressways, which make it a lot easier to be like, all right, we're northbound on I-94, we're passing mile marker 115. All right, we're passing mile marker 114, 90 miles an hour, northbound. It gets a little easier on expressways. It's going to depend, the interval of when you give that information out to dispatch is going to depend on what information you have. When you go to an area outside of your town, like over here, the further you get in, obviously, the less you're going to know and the less you're going to be able to give. And then when you get into an area that you know you're going to be able to give it more often, also speed plays a role in it. If you're doing 90 miles an hour, you're going to give it out less. James Conquest says, do you rely on GPS during your shift? I don't at all. Unless I'm going to a county courthouse 10 towns over or picking up somebody from a jail all the way, down in Springfield, I don't use GPS at all because I know where I'm going, most places that I'm going, and when I'm responding to a call, I don't want to be relying on GPS if I can afford to not. Is there still a part of town you are still not terribly familiar with? No, I'm pretty familiar with most places, even a lot of backyards and stuff, because I've been working in the same area for 12 years. And after 12 years, it becomes difficult to find a new thing to look at every day. I still try to find somewhere new I haven't been every day, but I'm kind of at the point where now I'm doing trails in the woods to find somewhere new, and you can only walk so far away from the car, especially when it's hot out or really cold. Mike says, what kind of stopgaps are there now that when you get out of your vehicle, it's essentially inert, and so we don't have a stolen ambulance situation like the one in The Fugitive? I just did a podcast down in St. Louis about The Fugitive and was talking about it with some people on Instagram. And in that movie, the main character, he steals an ambulance. And he's able to just hop in the ambulance and drive away with it. And I was saying that's actually fairly common because they don't have interlock devices on ambulances. An interlock device is on police cars, most police cars. You put the key in, you fire it up, you drive it around. If you need to get out, you can push a little red button or flip a switch, and you can pull the key out. The car stays running, but you have the key, and they pretty much all have armored steering columns, so you can't steal the car. You get in, you can shake the wheel all you want, you can pull on the lever. It's running, but you can't drive away with it. That's the major safety mechanism that police cars have, so they can't be stolen. Dave says, does any city have a place that people run from either in a car or on foot, and the police go, if so, that those places called by cops? Most people that run are going to either get onto a major expressway and try to run away, or they're going to be going home. And so one great tactic that we can use is if we get a license plate number or we recognize that person and we know where home is for them, we can just drive to their home. And we have people already waiting at their house when they're running. That can be fairly effective. Arkalem127 says, video topic, stuff civilians should know, do when calling 911 that most people don't know. I think that is an awesome topic for a video, and we're going to leave it off right there because I can see the little light on my camera is blinking telling me I am out of battery. So I'm going to work on that topic, things people should know when they're calling 911. That's an awesome topic. Till next week, guys, be safe, take care of each other. Check those links down in the description if you haven't seen those other videos.
Hey, thanks for watching Free Field Training on YouTube. While you're here, why don't you go check out one of our other videos, or you can head on over to the Patreon and see how you can get your name put on the videos like these fine folks listed over here. There's also some exclusive content on Patreon that just shows you kind of behind the scenes like you're seeing now. We'll see you guys next time.
All right, I got to shut this off. It's dying. But I'll talk with you guys some more.